you can't get any better actress than Julianne Moore, it feels like to me, for a film. So I'm sure you guys must be thrilled with her performance. And then Steve Coogan, is that how you pronounce his name?
That is, yeah.
Who I think it's fantastic. They play parents, by the way, and they're not the best parents in the world, I've got to say. But I was really just I was so happy to see Coogan actually cast in this. One of my favorite movies from a year or two ago was The Trip.
Yeah, right.
And he goes around and he complains about, how come nobody takes me seriously as an actor? All I have to do is I do these comic bits. I've got soul. I got real soul. Right. And this is a movie that allows him to actually be serious, and he's very convincing. I think he's a great choice. I love your casting choices you guys made in this.
Thank you.
Steve's practically made a career of being beleaguered.
I know. That's his shtick now, I guess, isn't it? So. Well, the thing is, so this is an extremely well-acted and very emotional movie about how bad parents, the effects that bad parents have on kids. And what I thought was funny, though, about this is the kid, the 6-year-old, seems remarkably resilient given how bad her parents are. So I want to ask you guys, what's this movie about? Is it about how bad parents can be, or is it about the resilience of youth?
Very good question. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have said it's about either one precisely, but it's certainly about finding a way to construct a family that works, maybe. Finding a way to connect with people in the way that you can connect with them, and to make a world work when maybe it isn't working. Okay,
and the way that world is working, if your parents aren't working, find parents that do.
Well, I don't know. And I think I would also say, without sounding a little corny, it's going to sound a little corny, it's sort of a little bit about the indomitable nature of one child's spirit.
Right.
It's her ability to be a still center in a bit of a storm.
Yeah.
And somehow find a way to both influence those around her and to step into a new place in her life.
Okay, so let's start with the parents. These parents are parents from hell. Every step of the way, they are both successful in their own field. Julianne Moore plays an aging rock star. I don't know if how active her career is. She seems to be on the downside of her career, but she still obviously has tour dates and the like. Steve Coogan is an art dealer or something from London, so he's always flying overseas to either avoid his family or to make some big deal. They have this absolutely gorgeous, kid, this 6-year-old, who you can't help but sort of melt for as you're watching in the audience, and yet neither of them have the time of day for this kid. Talk about how you see these two parents. And are parents really as bad as all that?
Well, hopefully most aren't.
I mean, I would say they want to. There's an important part of each of their hearts, in a way, both Susanna and Beale, that loves and wants to continue to love this child, and yet there's something so ego blind about the way they live their lives and the anger that they have toward the other, that it gets in the way of parenting. In a fundamental way.
So you really, I think I lost count the number of times that both of them told their Maisie, what Maisie Knew is the name of the movie, that told Maisie how much they loved them, and every time it just felt hollower and hollower and hollower.
Right.
But you actually do believe that there is something redeemable about those two as parents, and they really do love this kid that they ignore and ignore and ignore.
I think they really do love her, but I've heard Julianne talk about her character, and I think she's right. Like one of the reasons she is such a bad parent is because she's so, she's completely self-involved. But then there will be moments when she's just so full of love, as if to compensate. She'll just smother her with kind of inappropriate affection and information, and talk to her kind of not like you talk to a 6-year-old. So I think it's that kind of wild swinging back and forth of absence and then this kind of crazy smothering presence. That's kind of in a way what makes her particular parenting so kind of awful.
That's good. That compensation, and that rings true in an exaggerated version. What all parents go through. They feel like, I haven't been the ideal dad, and you kind of overcompensate. That I get. This just seems in such extreme position, but then maybe that's the point of the movie. Yeah, like that scene where she brings her friend over, her daughter's friend over, and they build that humongous like a dessert ice cream cake kind of thing with whipped cream and all of that. And it's a way to sort of establish that, listen, you're really happy with me, not your dad. And also I'm showing how much I love you because I'm letting you do what every 6-year-old kid dreams of. But yeah, it'd be better if she was just there day in and day out in terms of compensation.
Forget the ice cream cake.
Exactly. Okay, and then the Steve Coogan character, let's talk a bit about him. How much does he love his daughter vis-a-vis how much he loves to hate his wife, and or I don't know if it's fair to kind of judge him. I don't know if he's actually seducing a string of women or it just happens to be the one woman that that is within his sort of worldview at the time. But I think anybody who goes after the nanny, that crosses a line, I would think. Anyway, talk a bit about what's redeemable about that guy, because he does seem also insufferable.
Well, the thing that I would say about Beale is that he's maybe just not meant to be a father in a strange way. And he wants to be a father. He wants to keep doing the right thing, but he just keeps doing the wrong thing. And in a way, the way he kind of steps himself out of the picture is kind of basic to his character, basic to sort of what maybe he knows about himself in terms of surviving, but it's pretty detrimental to the child.
Yes, and to anybody else who gets mixed up with him too.
Right.
So let's talk. So we have these awful parents, and then we have these sort of substitute parents. They both tend to be the love interest of these individual parents who end up going their separate ways. And now it seems to me that you have, if the parents are over the top bad, these two substitute parents seem like, the ideal, almost an idealized vision of what parents should be. Can you talk about these substitute parents? This is the guy who ends up marrying Julianne Moore after the divorce, and the woman who ends up marrying Steve Coogan's character. Those two.
Right.
Well, they're both introduced into this story in a kind of shady way. The nanny who marries the divorcing husband, you have to kind of question what's going on there, like what her motives are, and
definitely.
That crisis that creates for her as she starts asking those questions, I guess, is part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lincoln, the character played by Alexander Skarsgård, he's sort of a groupie hanger-on who ends up marrying the rock star. We're not sure exactly what's going on there either, but both of them kind of find themselves, and I think the way they do is, they discover what it means to kind of have responsibility for someone who isn't you. They kind of find themselves, by default almost being the caregivers of little Maisie. And that really is the catalyst for growth for each of them.
It winds up feeling like a dichotomy of opposites, but because the parents are so bad, but in a way, Alexander Skarsgård's and Joanna Vanderham's characters, they just have a kind of simple relationship with the child. It's not like they really are such wonderful parents. It's just that they're simply gentle and kind enough to make the parents seem, in contrast, like a couple of monsters.
Yeah, I see. In contrast to the parents, these seem like they're idealized. Really, they're just like the way most of us would interact with these kids. Yeah, and there's a nice dynamic, that kind of a fourfold dynamic. You got four pretty strong characters, and you're right. The two who end up being kind of like substitute parents, they both, shady is a good word, especially the first time when Alexander Skarsgård's character comes in to pick the kid up from school. It's like, I don't think she should be going on with that guy. He doesn't even look like he's all there, but he proves he grows into the role, as opposed to the parents who seem to grow out of the role if they ever service the role at all. Okay, and now we have to start talking about the star of this movie, Maisie. What Maisie Knew. It's sort of more or less told from the point of view of this 6-year-old Maisie. First off, who is she? Well, how do you pronounce her name again?
Her name is Onata April.
Onata April. Again, this just comes a year after we all discovered Quvenzhané Wallis. It's like there are these preternaturally brilliant children out there that you guys are capturing in movies. Talk a bit about who she is, where'd she come from, how'd she get cast, and how you saw her role in the movie and how well she pulled it off.
We couldn't agree with you more about her. She's a special kid, and she was just 6 years old when we shot the film. we searched like mad people, for little Maisie. We had a great casting director. Her name's Avi Kaufman. She famously cast Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. So she'd had experience finding special kids, but we actually didn't find Onata until we were almost 3 weeks out from production. And so we had a movie that foolishly, in a way, when we think about it retrospectively, foolishly, the whole thing is resting on her shoulders, and we don't have our Maisie 3 weeks before the shoot. So we were in a bit of a panic. We even went so far as to, we had friends who were school teachers in New York City asking them for access, to the playgrounds and things so that we could just sort of see if we could find a natural kid. But, a couple of middle-aged guys prowling around school playgrounds wasn't really looked on that well, even with access. But
still,
yeah.
Now, before you get into how good she is, can you tell? So you looked at a lot of kids, I'm assuming?
Hundreds.
Okay, so what do kids do wrong, or how is it that kids, when you see somebody like Kuvanjane and you see somebody like Onata, it's like it works and it's perfect, but what do they have that those other kids don't, or what do other kids? Because a lot of kids are as natural as these two kids are on the screen, but when you put them on screen, they're not. What's wrong about the way most of our kids, deal with people like you, filmmakers?
I think there are two kinds of kids you see when you're auditioning, and some of them are sort of little professionals, and they're like they've rehearsed and they're all ready to go, and
they know their lines,
and they know your name when they come in and shake your hand.
Yeah.
And there's something like, when you're trying to cast a kid who seems very natural, there's something, as soon as you meet those kids, they could be adorable and super, super talented, and they might not even know how to tap dance, but they're not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then there's the other kind of kid, I think, who's just just not gonna step up to the challenge, kind of, because it's a big deal. Like little Onata had to show up every single day for 34 working days in a row, 8 or 9 hour days, and be present, like be able to kind of engage with us and Julianne Moore and Steve Coogan kind of on a professional set. So finding that kind of balance of a real kid who is also capable isn't easy.
We were looking for a child who you would believe when you were looking at her face in close up that you were getting inside of her head and inside of her heart in a way that you were watching her think, because it's not a super dialogue heavy role, and yet she has to communicate quite a lot over the course of the movie.
But does she know that she's doing that, or is it just come naturally? Because I would think a 6-year-old isn't that self-conscious to know, okay, now I'm projecting this thought or that thought.
Well, it's amazing with Onata because, Onata, she was 6, she's not 3, so she's pretty cognizant being, and she understood the shape of each scene that we were doing and the overall shape of the story. But it's a natural ability to be that subtle. We made another movie called The Deep End with Tilda Swinton, and Tilda also has that great ability to be that subtle in close-up and to give you a sense that you're watching her think. But Tilda's a grown-up, highly trained performer and actress. For Onata, it just was a natural ability that to be that subtle, to let her eyes move subtly enough, to dart, to look down, to look up, to do the business of acting in a way that, actors spend years trying to get back to. It was an amazing thing to watch.
And how do you know when you hired her, maybe 2 weeks in, she'd suddenly change or go south?
We never thought about that.
You're that confident.
No, I'm teasing. We were absolutely panicked about it.
We just jumped off a cliff, and just hoped we had a parachute back there in case things didn't go well. It was really scary, and exactly that. Like even after day 1 or day 2, it was like, okay, so this is going really well. We're really excited. Like she's giving us much more than we ever imagined, but what if she just decides she doesn't want to do it anymore? She's sick.
What if she just gets tired? Or, what if,
Like, it's no fun and she wants to go home now. Like, she didn't realize it was going to go on for, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
She didn't even know what 7 weeks was, right? It could have gone anyway.
But she never cracked.
No, she was amazing. We had one time when it was a really late night shoot, and it was a distant location. It was a big deal. It was like the climactic scene in the movie when Julianne Moore's character comes back. And, everybody was ready to do this. We had all the lights set up. We had costumes all on. We're all out in Long Island, quite a distant way from our base. And it got to be time
got,
to
like,
do the scene.
Got 2 shots into the work, and little Onata falls asleep.
It's past her bedtime.
She's in her mother's arms. We're looking at her mother, who was our great partner during this, always had Onata prepared and ready. And we're like, Val. And Val's like, what do you want me to do? She's asleep.
Wow. And so what did you do?
We all packed up and went back to Manhattan. We figured out another time to do the scene, but it was actually really challenging. It was I think 3 days before Alexander was to move on to another movie.
Oh, yeah.
So and he's in that scene, so we had to figure out, before we packed up and went back, we had to shoot out the little pieces that he would be in and hope that would kind of work.
Cobbled together.
Cobbled together.
Well, work. I didn't notice it. Yeah. Cobble something together. Yeah. Okay, very good. And then I think the last thing I want to explore is this idea that it's a Henry James novel that it's based on. First off, a couple of things. Henry James, it has to be, I think, the most impossible guy to film. Even though I know people in your trade continue to do it, and you've done quite, as a profession. I think you've really done. Wings of Dove, I think, was fantastic, and you don't appreciate how well the filmmaker or the screenwriter in that case has done until you actually go back and try to read that text. It is so intricately dense. It's like ridiculous. It's
right.
like it's almost impenetrable. And the idea that you can make a movie out of that kind of thing is kind of striking. Now, you guys do not try to you're not filming what Maisie Knew that Henry James wrote. It's contemporary times and all that. But what connections do you feel to the Henry James novel, What Maisie Knew?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We read the script before we read the novel, and when we read the script, neither of us had even heard of the novel.
Is that right? Okay.
It's a little embarrassing.
We both read
admit,
a bunch of James in college.
It's true. It's not one of the. It's more of a. It's a point of view Henry James that isn't. It's not considered one of his masterpieces. Yeah.
But you're right. It's a narrow volume, but it's very dense.
Yeah.
When we went to read it, we were surprised, like how challenging it is to read.
How many times do I have to read this paragraph before I understand what he's actually?
I share your pain. I'm an English major, and oh my God.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
So, and somebody told us recently, and I think it's true. No one's ever contemporized a Henry James story.
I think maybe there's a French film based on I can't remember what, but yeah.
But when they're done in period.
Yeah.
So we thankfully didn't have the heavy lifting of the adaptation. I mean, the writers, Carol Cartwright and Nancy Doyne, had the idea of doing this and written a very nice screenplay, and that's what we read first.
Yeah. So the thing is, you kept. Do you think that the Henry James connection is needed? I noticed that even though if I had never heard there was any connection to Henry James, it still works as a contemporary movie. I mean, you don't need the Henry James connection.
No.
The fact that you kept the title from the Henry James novel, do you want to make that connection, or you don't, or you couldn't come up with a different name for the movie that would be as legitimate or as compelling? I'm just trying to how much are you trying to play off the Henry James connection, and how much do you want to run away from it?
Well, I think we like the connection.
Yeah, no, because it's a nice it's an interesting adaptation in that it's more of a touchstone. The book is more of a touchstone than it is a real adaptation. I think that's interesting. You don't see it that happen often. And in fact, there are many movies out there that I've seen that I've thought this is based on something that the filmmakers actually aren't acknowledging. And it always seems a little bit strange to me.
I see. So it's not a cheat just calling it based on the Henry James novel, because in effect it would be more of a cheat to not acknowledge the fact that there was an inspiration for the source of your movie.
Well, it really is. David's referring to it as a touchstone, but the roots of it really are in Henry James. The character relationships, the basic plotting, all of that really is. And remarkably so. It's 117 years ago or something. It's kind of fascinating that a story that feels this contemporary really is rooted in such a different time.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, listen, anytime I have a co-directors, I always have to ask them what it's like to work together. I've got 4 brothers, and I mean, we get along great, but I've never had to work with them like you two, I assume, must work. Why is it that whatever arrangement you two have works better than if you were on your own and you were on your own?
Maybe it would work better if we were on. on our own. We just never have tried it that way.
Don't let me be the one that splits you two up.
I'm just teasing. We've been working together for more than 20 years, Scott and I. So we didn't go to film school. We were both in graduate school in other areas when we first started working together. And I think because of that, we figured out our own process. And there was no one there to say, maybe you should try and do this, and maybe you should try and do this. We really just did it together.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's so different from the way the Coen brothers work, from what I understand.
Have you guys ever touched base with them to sort of see how they do things and sort of brothers? And
we've met, but that's a funny thing about being a director. You don't actually know how other people do it so much. You don't find yourself on other directors' sets that often. In fact, you kind of stay away to some degree.
We're often like quizzing actors or other technicians kind of about like, what's it like working with so and so, just to kind of hopefully glean some advice.
That was one of the things that Eli Roth thought was so great about being in Inglourious Basterds, that he was on the set. I mean, as a director, he's known as a director, but he's on the set with Quentin Tarantino, and that would be an interesting insight into how they do things. So I remember I've been seeing your movies since back in the Suture days, and I'm wondering, over these 20 years, are you where you thought you would be in terms of your career? Because I've got to say, I'm surprised at what Maisie Knew. If I was looking at Suture, you seem to have found a way to kind of work yourself right into the mainstream. I mean, you've got mainstream actors and actresses working with you and relatively accessible material. I was wondering if this is where you saw your career going, or do you see a commonality between something as kind of experimental and edgy as Suture with what Maisie Knew?
Our interests in filmmaking are sort of genre based. We did come at filmmaking from that basis, I think. The kind of movies that we watched maybe most when we first started working together were American melodramas, post-war melodramas like Vincent Minnelli's films and Douglas Sirk's films. And those films are big, family-oriented often, but challenging and kind of subversive movies that deal with sacrifice and repressed emotion and desire. And those informed our thinking about movies and the kinds of movies that we were interested in making. So I don't think like making movies that were more mainstream was something that we weren't interested in. In fact, I would say it might be the opposite. So we also often say we haven't made many more movies than we've made because there are so many projects that get very, very close that actually never wind up happening. So
that you guys have worked on?
Yeah.
I see.
We're looking to change that up a little bit. Maybe make them a little more often.
And now, can you guys see yourself circling back to go do something that had almost come to fruition and not, or is that in the past and you're now moving forward? I'm sort of interested in where you see your careers next, or in the next 5 years or 10 years.
We've got a couple of things we'd like to go back and make, and who knows if we'll ever get a chance to. It's hard to bring something up that people have already kind of had ideas about. Kind of make it fresh.
And we're developing a couple of biopics now, actually, and we've never actually worked with a real person's life before, so that's been interesting to us.
Well, and in terms of where you are and where the industry is going, do you feel like are you in the sweet spot of your career? Is this, do you think that you are at the point where you can do what you want to do, or does it still feel like a struggle to find the money and find the material and get it on the screen?
I'm afraid it's always a struggle.
Yeah,
that's the sad truth of it. Is I don't think anybody's in a sweet spot really. Like if you talk to the most successful directors in the world, and they're still struggling. Yeah. So and we're far
just hope
from there.
To feel a little less quicksand around your feet.
You're singing a little slower than you.